My own family told me I didn't deserve a bed at our vacation villa because I was dead weight. But when my 8-year-old daughter pulled out a legal document that made everyone's jaw drop, the silence in that room was deafening. I'm Sage Harper, and 6 months ago I thought I knew what rock bottom looked like. My husband Carter had just left me for his 23-year-old secretary. I was scrambling to build a freelance graphic design business from scratch, and then my dad Owen suddenly passed away from a heart attack. The one person who always believed in me was gone, and I felt completely alone except for my 8-year-old daughter Luna. My older brother Blake has always been the golden child, real estate agent, perfect marriage, 2 kids, the works. My mother Vivian never lets me forget that I'm the disappointment who couldn't keep her marriage together or build a stable career like Blake did. But my dad Owen was different. He used to tell Luna she was his special princess and that her mommy was the strongest woman he knew. Luna adored him completely. What I didn't know was that my dad had been planning something that would change everything. He'd been watching how my family treated me, and he decided to leave me a gift that would reveal the truth about who was really carrying whom in this family. The villa vacation was supposed to be our first family trip since Dad died. I was already feeling fragile, using money I couldn't afford just to keep up appearances and not give my family more reasons to look down on me. Luna was excited because she thought it would be like the fun trips we used to take when Grandpa Owen was alive. She had no idea she was carrying something in her little princess backpack that would turn our entire family dynamic upside down. What happened next showed me that sometimes the people who love us most see exactly what we need, even after they're gone. And sometimes it takes the innocent honesty of an 8-year-old to deliver the most devastating truth of all. The months after my divorce were brutal. Carter didn't just leave me for someone younger, he left me financially devastated. Our joint accounts were drained, the house had to be sold, and I was starting over at 34 with nothing but my laptop and a dream of making freelance graphic design work. Luna kept asking why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, and I was running out of ways to explain it without breaking down in front of her. Then Dad died, and I lost the only family member who actually supported me. Owen Harper was a successful businessman who built his company from nothing, and he understood what it meant to struggle. While my mother Vivian constantly reminded me that Blake had his life together and I didn't, Dad would quietly slip me grocery money or pay for Luna's dance classes without making me feel like charity. Blake stepped into the role of family organizer after Dad's funeral, which basically meant he got to make all the decisions while making me feel grateful for whatever scraps I got. The annual Napa Valley Villa vacation had been a family tradition for 5 years, and Blake announced we'd continue it to honor Dad's memory. What he didn't mention was that he'd be treating me like the poor relative who needed to be grateful for whatever room was left over. I should have seen the warning signs. When Blake called to discuss the trip details, he spent most of the conversation talking about how expensive everything was getting and how we all needed to pull our weight financially. The way he said it made it clear he was talking about me. When I asked about my share of the costs, he quoted a number that made my stomach drop. It was money I didn't have, money that was supposed to go toward Luna's school supplies and winter clothes. But I couldn't bear the thought of Luna missing out on what might be our last family vacation. She'd been through so much with the divorce and losing her grandfather. She still talked about how Grandpa Owen used to read her bedtime stories over video calls and send her postcards from his business trips. The light in her eyes when she talked about the villa trip was the first real joy I'd seen from her in months. So I did what desperate mothers do. I emptied my small emergency fund, the money I'd been saving for Luna's future school expenses. I told myself it was an investment in family healing, that maybe this trip would help bridge the growing gap between me and my family. I was so wrong. The week before the trip, Luna started acting strangely excited about something. She kept checking her little princess backpack and whispering to herself. When I asked what she was up to, she'd give me that mischievous 8-year-old smile and say, "It's a secret from Grandpa Owen." I assumed she was talking about some toy or keepsake he'd given her before he died. Luna had always been a sentimental child, keeping every drawing, every card, every small gift like they were treasures. My mother's behavior leading up to the trip should have been another red flag. Vivian kept making pointed comments about living within your means and not expecting others to carry you. She developed this habit of speaking about me in third person, even when I was in the room, as if my financial struggles made me less of a person worthy of direct conversation. The night before we left, I sat in my tiny apartment looking at my bank account balance. After paying for the vacation, I had barely enough left for groceries. I was 34 years old, sleeping on a pull-out couch because Luna had the only bedroom, working until midnight most nights trying to build a client base that could support us. I felt like such a failure. Luna found me sitting there with my head in my hands. She climbed into my lap and hugged me tight. "Mommy, why do you look sad?" she asked. I tried to explain that grown-ups sometimes worry about money, but she just nodded wisely and said, "Grandpa Owen told me you're the bravest person ever. He said you just need to remember that sometimes." I had no idea that my father had spent his final months watching my family treat me like a burden while I struggled to rebuild my life. I didn't know that he'd been planning something that would change everything. All I knew was that I felt smaller and more insignificant with every passing day, and I was about to walk into a family vacation where I'd be reminded of my failures at every turn. The drive to Napa Valley should have been exciting. Luna chattered happily in the back seat, her princess backpack clutched tightly on her lap. She kept patting it protectively like she was guarding something precious. I remember thinking how sweet it was that she still carried around reminders of her grandfather. I had no idea she was carrying the key to everything. The villa looked exactly the same as it had for the past 5 years, a beautiful stone house surrounded by vineyards that had always felt like our family's special place. But the moment we pulled into the driveway, I could sense something was different. Blake and his family had arrived first, and when he came out to greet us, there was something in his expression that made my stomach clench. "Sage, we need to talk about the arrangements," he said before I'd even gotten our bags out of the car. Luna was already running around the property, excited to explore, completely oblivious to the tension building between the adults. Inside, my mother Vivian was sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of coffee, looking like she was holding court. Blake's wife Emma was unpacking groceries, and their 2 kids were setting up gaming equipment in what I thought was going to be Luna's and my room. That's when it hit me that something was very wrong. "So here's the thing," Blake started, using that patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. "We've had to make some adjustments to the sleeping arrangements. Emma and I are in the master suite, obviously, since we're handling most of the coordination and costs. Mom gets the guest room, and we really need the 3rd bedroom for storage and the kids' setup." I stared at him, not understanding. "Where are Luna and I supposed to sleep?" "Well, there's the living room," he said with a shrug. "The couch pulls out. It'll be fine for a few nights." The casual way he said it, like it was perfectly reasonable to stick me and my 8-year-old daughter on a pull-out couch while his kids got an entire bedroom for video games, made my face burn with humiliation. But what came next was worse. "I mean, let's be honest here," my mother chimed in, not even looking up from her coffee. "If you can't contribute equally to these trips anymore, you can't expect equal treatment." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the room, seeing Emma's uncomfortable expression and Blake's defensive posture. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Blake said, his voice getting harder, "that we're all adults here, and we all know that Dad was basically subsidizing these vacations for you. Now that he's gone, things have to change. You either pay your fair share or you accept that your accommodations might not be quite as luxurious." I felt like I was going to be sick. "I paid exactly what you asked me to pay." "You paid what you could afford," Vivian corrected coldly. "There's a difference." The room went quiet except for the sound of Luna playing outside, her happy laughter drifting through the windows. I realized they'd planned this. They'd discussed it ahead of time, decided that I needed to be put in my place, reminded of my status as the family charity case. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Luna and I can share the pull-out couch. It's fine, we'll make it work." But Blake wasn't done. "Actually, that brings up another point. We're all going to be sharing common spaces, and it's going to be crowded with everyone's stuff. We need to be realistic about space allocation based on, contribution levels." I stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she shouldn't get a room," he said flatly. "Let her sleep on the floor if she has to." That's reality. The words hung in the air like poison. My own brother had just suggested that I sleep on the floor like a dog. I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. That's when my mother delivered the final blow. That's what happens when you become dead weight, Sage. Actions have consequences. Dead weight. My own mother had just called me dead weight in front of my 8-year-old daughter, who had chosen that exact moment to come skipping back into the house, her cheeks flushed from running around outside. Luna looked around the room, sensing the tension immediately. Her bright smile faded as she took in the adults' faces. "Mommy, why does everyone look mad? Why would Mommy sleep on the floor?" Luna asked, her 8-year-old logic cutting through all the adult cruelty. "Grandpa Owen said beds are for sleeping." Blake and Vivian exchanged looks, clearly annoyed that Luna had overheard. "Go play outside, sweetheart," Vivian said dismissively. "This is grown-up talk." But Luna didn't move. She was looking at me with those big, perceptive eyes, and I could see her trying to understand why her family was being mean to her mommy. The innocence in her expression made everything worse. She shouldn't have to witness this. She shouldn't have to see her mother being humiliated by her own family. I felt something break inside me. I was done. Done with being treated like a burden. Done with accepting scraps. Done with letting my daughter see me get walked on by people who were supposed to love us. I was gathering every ounce of dignity I had left, preparing to pack our bags and leave this toxic situation behind. My hands were shaking as I reached for Luna's backpack, trying to hold back tears that threatened to spill over. I couldn't let my 8-year-old daughter see me completely fall apart, even though my heart was breaking into a million pieces. "Come on, Luna," I said, my voice barely steady. "We're going home." But Luna wasn't moving toward me. Instead, she was standing in the middle of the living room, looking back and forth between me and her uncle and grandmother, with a confused expression that was rapidly turning into something else, something determined. "Mommy, why are they being so mean to you?" she asked, her voice getting louder. "Why are Uncle Blake and Grandma Vivian saying you have to sleep on the floor like a puppy?" Blake huffed impatiently. "Luna, this is adult business. You wouldn't understand." "I understand that you're being mean to my mommy," Luna shot back with the fierce honesty that only 8-year-olds possess. "Grandpa Owen said we should never be mean to people we love." Vivian waved her hand dismissively. "Your grandfather isn't here anymore, sweetheart. Things are different now." That's when I saw something shift in Luna's expression. The mention of her beloved grandfather seemed to trigger a memory, and suddenly she was rummaging through her princess backpack with urgent purpose. I watched, confused, as she pushed aside her coloring books and stuffed animals, digging deeper into the bag. "Mommy," she said, still searching through her backpack, "didn't Grandpa Owen tell you to bring something important on family trips?" I had no idea what she was talking about. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "He gave me something super important before he went to heaven," Luna explained, her small hands finally finding what she was looking for. "He made me promise to keep it safe and show it if anyone was ever mean to you at the big house." My breath caught in my throat as Luna pulled out a manila envelope I'd never seen before. It was sealed and looked official, with my name written on the front in my father's distinctive handwriting. Blake and Vivian had stopped their conversation and were staring at the envelope with growing curiosity and concern. "Luna, where did you get that?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. "Grandpa Owen gave it to me the last time he came to our apartment," she said matter-of-factly. "Remember when you were in the kitchen making him coffee? He told me it was a very special secret, and I had to keep it in my backpack always, especially when we came to the big house for vacations. My father had visited us just 2 weeks before he died. I remembered making him coffee while he and Luna played in the living room, but I had no idea they'd had this private conversation." My hands were trembling as I reached for the envelope. "He told me exactly what to say if people forgot to be nice to you," Luna continued, looking directly at Blake and Vivian with the fearless confidence of a child who believed her grandfather's words were gospel truth. "He said sometimes grown-ups forget important things and little girls have to help them remember." Blake tried to maintain his dismissive attitude. "Luna, honey, whatever your grandfather gave you, it doesn't change the situation here." But Luna wasn't intimidated. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin in a gesture that reminded me so much of my father, it took my breath away. "Grandpa Owen said this would show everyone who really pays for the big house, where we have fun." The room went completely silent. Even Blake's kids stopped their game setup to listen. Luna's words hung in the air with a weight that none of us fully understood yet, but everyone could sense that something significant was about to happen. He told me that if anyone ever made you sad at the big house, I should give this to you and tell them what it says, Luna announced with the solemnity of a child carrying out a sacred mission. I looked at the envelope in my hands, my father's handwriting blurring through my tears. Owen Harper had always been 10 steps ahead of everyone else in business, and apparently he'd been just as strategic about protecting his family. He'd seen how Blake and Vivian treated me, and he'd prepared for this exact moment. Grandpa Owen said you're not dead weight, Mommy, Luna said firmly, glaring at her grandmother. He said you're the strongest person he knew, and anyone who can't see that is silly. My 8-year-old daughter had just delivered a message from beyond the grave, and I had no idea that everything was about to change forever. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope, but Luna took charge of the moment with the confidence only a child following her beloved grandfather's instructions could possess. She gently took the papers from me and held them up for everyone to see. Grandpa Owen told me to read this part, she announced, pointing to a section at the top of the document. Her reading was careful and deliberate, the way 8-year-olds sound when they're proud of tackling big words. This says, Deed of Ownership for 1247 Vineyard Vista Lane, Napa Valley, California. The color drained from Blake's face instantly. What did you just say? Luna looked at him with the patience of a child explaining something obvious to a confused adult. It's the paper that shows who owns the big house. Grandpa Owen said sometimes people forget, so we keep the paper to help them remember. I snatched the document from Luna's hands, my eyes scanning the legal text that I couldn't quite process. But there it was, clear as day. Owen Harper had purchased this villa 3 years ago, not rented, purchased. And according to his will, which was attached to the deed, the property now belonged entirely to me. Blake stumbled backward like he'd been physically struck. That's impossible. We've been renting this place for 5 years. No, Uncle Blake, Luna corrected him with 8-year-old certainty. Grandpa Owen bought it so our family could always come here. He told me he wanted to make sure Mommy always had a place where she felt safe and happy. Vivian had gone completely white and was gripping the kitchen counter. Owen never told us he bought this place. We've been paying rent. I was reading through the documents with growing amazement and horror. My father hadn't just bought the villa. He'd been secretly covering most of the so-called rental costs for years. The amount each family member thought they were paying was actually just a fraction of the real expenses. Owen had been subsidizing these family vacations entirely, letting everyone believe they were contributing equally when he was footing nearly the entire bill. Grandpa Owen said the money everyone gave him was like allowance. Luna piped up helpfully. He said it made everyone feel good to help, but he wanted to take care of all of us because that's what daddies do. Blake was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This has to be some kind of mistake. Dad would have told us if he owned this place. He didn't tell you because he knew exactly how you'd react, I said, the truth hitting me like a sledgehammer. He knew you'd treat him differently if you realized he was basically giving us all charity. He knew you'd probably try to take advantage of it. Luna nodded seriously. Grandpa Owen said some people get weird about money, but families should just love each other. He said this house was his present to make sure we could always be together and have fun. I kept reading, discovering more devastating details. Owen had left specific instructions in his will about the property. He wanted it to remain a place where the family could gather, but he'd made me the sole owner because, in his words written right there in legal document, Sage has always been the heart of this family, and she deserves to know her worth. Oh my God, I whispered, reading his personal letter attached to the will. He knew exactly how you all treated me. Vivian finally found her voice, and it was barely a whisper. What does the letter say? I read aloud, my voice getting stronger with each word. If Sage is reading this, it means she's probably being made to feel less than worthy by family members who have forgotten that love isn't conditional on bank account balances. This house belongs to her because she is the one who loves unconditionally, gives selflessly, and deserves to be treated like the treasure she is. Luna beamed with pride. See, Grandpa Owen said you're a treasure, Mommy. Blake collapsed into a chair, the full weight of the situation crushing down on him. For 3 years, he'd been staying in my house while treating me like a charity case. For 3 years, he'd been acting superior while my father quietly covered his expenses. For 3 years, he'd been lecturing me about pulling my weight while I was actually the one with the legal right to be there. Blake, I said quietly, you just told the owner of this house that she should sleep on the floor. Luna clapped her hands together happily. Now everyone can have nice beds. Grandpa Owen would be so happy that everyone knows the truth. The room was absolutely silent except for Luna's cheerful voice, completely oblivious to the magnitude of what she'd just revealed. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Blake was staring at the floor, his face red with shame and embarrassment. Vivian had tears streaming down her cheeks, finally understanding the full scope of her cruelty. Emma was trying to corral their kids, who were confused about why all the adults suddenly looked so serious. But Luna was still beaming, completely satisfied that she'd completed her mission from Grandpa Owen. She climbed into my lap and whispered, "Did I do good, Mommy?" Grandpa Owen said this would make everyone remember to be nice. I hugged her tight, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what my father had done. This wasn't just about giving me a house. This was about giving me proof of my worth, delivered through the pure love of a child who had faithfully carried out her grandfather's final wish. Blake finally looked up, his voice cracking. "Sage, I am so sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known Dad owned this place, if I'd known he was covering the costs." "But you didn't know," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. "And that's exactly the point. You treated me like garbage when you thought I was struggling. You made me feel worthless when you believed I was taking charity. The ownership of this house doesn't change who you really are, Blake. It just reveals it." Vivian was sobbing now, clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. "Oh, Sage. What have I done? What have I said to you?" "You called me dead weight," I said simply. "You suggested I sleep on the floor. You did that because you thought you could, because you thought I had no power, no worth, no value." Luna looked confused by all the crying adults. "Why is everyone sad? Grandpa Owen said this would make everyone happy." "Everyone's sad because they were mean to Mommy before they knew about the house," I explained gently. "And now they realize they shouldn't have been mean at all." Blake stood up, his movements shaky. "What can I do to make this right? How can I fix this?" I looked around the villa that was now legally mine, at the family who had just spent the last hour humiliating me, and I realized I had a choice. I could kick them out, make them feel as small as they'd made me feel, or I could choose something different. "You can stay," I said quietly. "You can all stay for the vacation like we planned. But things are going to be different now. You're going to treat me with respect, not because I own this house, but because I'm a human being who deserves basic dignity." Luna clapped her hands. "Yay, now we can all have the fun vacation like Grandpa Owen wanted." "But this isn't charity," I continued, looking directly at Blake and Vivian. "This is me choosing to be gracious. This is me choosing to be better than the way you treated me." Over the next few days, everything changed. Blake helped with grocery shopping and cooking without being asked. Vivian actually listened when I spoke, treating my opinions as valuable. Emma apologized for not speaking up earlier. The kids played together without the undercurrent of adult tension that had poisoned previous trips. Luna was just happy that everyone was being nice to her mommy again. She kept telling anyone who would listen about how Grandpa Owen was the smartest grown-up ever, and how he'd taught her to keep important secrets. On our last evening, as we sat on the deck watching the sunset over the vineyards, Vivian came and sat beside me. "I've been a terrible mother to you," she said quietly. "I've been so focused on what I thought success looked like that I forgot to see how strong you really are." "Dad saw it," I said. "He saw it even when I couldn't see it myself." "He did," she agreed, "and he made sure you'd never forget it again." Luna curled up in my lap, tired from a day of swimming and playing. "Mommy, are you happy now?" "I'm happy, baby." "Good. Grandpa Owen said you deserved to be happy always." Looking back, I realized that my father's gift wasn't really about the house or the money. It was about showing me that I had never been dead weight. I had never been a burden. I had always been worthy of love and respect, even when the people around me forgot to show it. Sometimes our guardian angels work in mysterious ways. Sometimes they work through the innocent faith of an 8-year-old who keeps her promises. And sometimes they leave us exactly what we need to remember who we really are. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. Comment below about a time when someone unexpected stood up for you. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us what family and love really mean.